So, as you might know from my channels both on YouTube and Twitch, I play Dead by Daylight a lot, and I have a lot of fun with it. But one thing you may notice upon viewing my old VODs on Twitch and my clip compilations here on YouTube is that there's a severe lack in killer gameplay, and I'm here to share why that is. But before we get into this topic, allow me to introduce myself. Hi, I'm Kona is Bored, or Kona for short, and I play games and like to rant about them. So if you're interested in more content like this, please drop a like and feel free to leave a comment. I really enjoy seeing other people's opinions on this game, and any kind of interaction really pushes these types of videos out to more people like you. Anyway, I'll stop yapping and I'll get on with the video. So, as of me writing this script, Dead by Daylight is coming up to its 10th anniversary. 10 years and the game is still kicking. So, you'd think the game is fun and the community is super welcoming and wholesome, right? And you would be
wrong.
That is absolutely
Wrong.
proved over and over again.
Wrong.
For as long as I can remember, Dead by Daylight's gameplay and community has always pushed an us versus them kind of mentality. And while I don't think this is what the devs over at Behavior Interactive intended, it's definitely there, and it shows its teeth in almost every trial throughout the fog. I usually don't care about toxicity as much as some of the community, but I can still agree that most of the time it is needless, and a lot of frustration on both sides is coming from a place of entitlement instead of genuine frustration. I can understand that Dead by Daylight's an extremely frustrating and non-beginner friendly game, but you really shouldn't be taking that out on other players. It's ridiculous how entitled certain players have become, and it makes it extremely difficult to enjoy playing the killer role. As killer, you are sometimes put into lose-lose scenarios where you will get toxicity if you win, and you will get toxicity if you lose. Let that sink in. Survivors get mad at a killer for killing as if it's not their primary objective. What makes this even worse is that survivors are also not entirely safe from this kind of scrutiny. Killers get just as mad when survivors gen rush. If you don't know what gen rushing is when survivors finish all 5 generators extremely quickly and escape very quickly. Or, in other words, killers get just as mad at survivors for surviving. I'm not trying to pick sides here, considering both sides have their fair share of bad apples and hints of frustration here and there, but both sides are just as guilty as each other when it comes to sheer toxicity and taking things further than they need to be. But if you were to ask me which side gets it worse, I'd have to say that killer catches more toxicity and harassment on the daily than survivors. And that one point makes it extremely hard to play and fully enjoy the role sometimes. Now, this topic was originally going to go hand in hand with the us versus them portion of the video, but upon reading the first draft of this script, I realized that killer anxiety is so much more than just the fear of encountering toxicity. No, killer anxiety is a mixture of doubts all bundled up into one, and to this day, it actively pushes players to hesitate on pressing the play button upon choosing to be a killer. I did mention earlier that Dead by Daylight is a frustrating and incredibly non-beginner friendly game. What I forgot to mention is that between both roles, Killer is by far the less friendly of the two. Over 40 powers, hundreds of add-ons and perks, and a ton of base kit mechanics that are barely touched on in the tutorial. Yep, that's pretty much how your first couple hundred hours of Killer is gonna go. Now, you could make the point that not every player will buy every Killer, so bringing up the 40 plus powers is a terrible point to make, but that's not the point of this argument. Survivors have a ton of perks, items, and add-ons as well, but do you know what makes Survivor so much more approachable? Almost all the resources and information you have on Survivor, besides maybe the perks, are super straightforward and easy to understand. Medkits? Yeah, they heal you and your teammates. Toolboxes? Yeah, you can fix generators faster and sabotage hooks. What's your goal and main strategy? You must fix gens, and you run away from the killer if he gets close. I'd say the most complicated part of Survivor is learning how to loop, and thankfully there's a lot of resources you have to learn this aspect of the game really quickly. Killer, on the other hand, is not as straightforward. What's my goal as Killer? I need to kill 4 survivors before 5 generators are repaired and the exit gates are powered. Okay, how do I kill them? You chase them. And how do I down survivors quickly and create pressure? Well, you see, it depends on what your killer's power is, what add-ons you're running, what map you load into, and so on. I'm not saying Killer's weak, I'm just pointing out that there are a ton of variables that actively work against Killer more often than Survivor. And that's why a lot of the community outright avoids Killer or limits their time on it. Because it gets extremely frustrating, and a lot of games, it has you feeling demoralized. Let me give you an example. Let's say you load up for a game with Hillbilly, excited to get some practice on your curves and your cross-map snipes, and you load into a lobby with a 4-man flashlight squad. You think to yourself, wow, there's 4 flashlights. I should run Lightborn so they can't blind me. So you equip Lightborn before you load into the game, and oh no, you got Larry's Memorial Institute, one of Billy's worst maps. You struggle to get down with your chainsaw, and when you do eventually down one of them, you realize the rest of their team are always swarming you every time you pick someone up. You think to yourself, I could risk each survivor wiggling out every time I pick one of them up, or I could punish them for swarming and get them all down in one fell swoop. So you down their first teammate, then the second, then the third, and finally you down the fourth. You secure your 4 kills and load into the endgame screen, feeling really proud of yourself that you beat all the odds. Well, guess what? Since you played toxic in that squad's eyes, they're gonna spam slurs and tell you to end yourself in the endgame chat. You played to win and succeeded, but their toxicity and harassment leaves you feeling defeated anyway. That's the crux of the issue. Not only is Killer very inconsistent on whether you'll have a good match, but there's always the chance that you will get harassed no matter how a match plays out. The saddest thing about these issues is that there's no one-size-fits-all solution for every killer. Every killer has their place on a tier list, and all have their own struggles, making it pretty much impossible to fix all killer frustrations. And regarding toxicity, I believe the dev team really needs to crack down harder on it. I personally don't get offended by toxicity anymore, but there are definitely players who are not the best mentally, and some of the things players say in this game, and even do outside of the game after endgame, goes way too far and can really affect people negatively. Now we get into the biggest reason I refuse to play Killer on stream. And surprisingly enough, it has nothing to do with any of the previous reasons I mentioned. Even if I agree, most Killer players are susceptible to them. My biggest reason I don't play Killer on stream really isn't that complicated. I just find playing Killer and watching Killer gameplay in the current state of the game extremely boring. Now, I'm not saying the gameplay loop or designs of each killer are boring. I'm saying the amount of build freedom we have, parallel to the amount of viability we have, is extremely low. Let me explain. In the last year alone, I've been seeing a lot of videos on YouTube circulating how killer morale is extremely low and how the role overall is less fun than it used to be. And I wholeheartedly agree for one reason: build variety. In my time playing Killer this last year, I've come to the consensus that a lot of builds are just not viable anymore. Yes, I could run a Pentimento Plaything build and slow down everything substantially, but who's to say all the generators get done before I get any value? On the other side of this coin, yes, I could only play top tier killers to secure consistent victories, but tell me, is it fun to watch the same small handful of killers and no variety? That's a huge issue plaguing killer as a whole right now. Killer players are being pushed to make their builds around how strong their killer is over what they find will be fun for them. And it makes it extremely hard to be entertaining if all I'm doing is running the same small handful of builds over running what I find fun or what my viewers may find entertaining. If killer players were to turn their back on this kind of build philosophy, it leaves them at a huge disadvantage to where they need to play practically perfectly to hold any pressure. And even then, there's still a chance that they can't secure a win. I'd say the only player I can think of off of the top of my head that can consistently win without needing a build is Quiet Kills. You guys should really check him out here on YouTube. He's very entertaining and is a very gifted trapper main, proving he's capable of winning killer games without any perks.
Oh, what's poppin', my boy? Ooh, all right, this should be the last chase of the match if nothing crazy happens. Oh, this. Thanks for the Deborooski, my boy.
Me, on the other hand, I'm not as consistent as he is, and like a lot of players, I really have to optimize my build in order to give my killers a boost, where, say, my game sense or decision making might leave me in a disadvantageous position. I honestly don't mind losing killer too much. It's to be expected playing a multiplayer game. What I do mind is when the game is balanced in a way where players feel they are required to play what's meta over being given full freedom without substantially being punished in-game. Closing this topic out, I personally don't mind playing killer in my free time, but I definitely try to avoid it on stream for the sake of both me and my audience as much as I can, because I don't want to fall into this fear of just another DVD toxicity clip farmer or just another toxic killer main wanting the game to be easier for them. I love Dead by Daylight and truly want it to succeed. And the only way we can do that is by the development team doing their best at satisfying both sides of the community without ruining the competitive integrity of the game. I'm not saying perfectly balance each side, that's impractical and it'll never happen. But both sides need to be given more love and care for certain things, such as build variety being less punishing, RNG elements being less deciding factors in matches, and overall just cracking down on toxicity and taking more severe action when someone goes too far. The game, according to Behavior, is at its core a party game, and while I don't think it needs to be competitively well balanced, I do believe it needs to be made more fun and less punishing. If you made it to the end of the video, I want to thank you for listening till the very end. I understand a lot of my takes may not be takes that everyone agrees on, and that's fine. If there's anything you agreed or disagreed with, feel free to share it down in the comments. And while you're down there, feel free to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. I enjoy constructive criticism here and there, so if there's anything you feel I did well at or anything you think I should work on, feel free to comment that as well. I do have another topic video lined up here soon regarding Overwatch and its relaunch, so be on the lookout for that in the coming weeks, and I can assure you, I will keep at it to push up the quality of these videos higher with each new upload. Thank you all, and I'll see y'all next time. Actually, one last thing before I go. Behavior, please just buy the full license of Easy Anti-Cheat. It's not that hard.